Lesson 88 is about using proportions to solve ratio problems. And our first question says, the ratio of salamanders to frogs was 5 to 7. If there were 20 salamanders, how many frogs were there? Well, in this problem it says the ratio of salamanders to frogs was 5 to 7. So, ratio, that just means a fraction. So salamanders is going to be S, and frogs will be F. So salamanders to frogs, because that's the way the question tells us. Let's put a box around this so we can refer back to it. The ratio of salamanders to frogs was 5 to 7. So where we see the salamanders S, we're going to put a 5. The frogs is a 7. So for every 5 salamanders, we have 7 frogs. The question says if there were 20 salamanders, how many frogs were there? So we know the ratio is going to help us build a proportion. The salamanders are on top, so we get 20 salamanders for how many frogs? We don't know. That's the question, so we're going to put F. Now, in order to figure out the answer to a proportion problem, we know we can use cross products, because cross products are always equal. So 7 times 20, that's 140. And 5 times F, the number of frogs, that must also be equal to 140. So 5 times F is equal to 140? Well, we must have to multiply F times 5 to get to 140. So F must be some number less than 140. To find our answer, we're going to divide. We're going to say 140 divided by 5. Well, 5 goes into 14 2 times. We get 10. With 4 left over, we bring down our 0. 5 goes into 40 8 times. And 5 times 8 is 40. So we've got our final answer. There must be 28 frogs. So we need a label, because it's a word problem. And we can go ahead and circle or box our answer, and we can move on to the next question. The key thing about these ratio problems is setting up your ratio, then your proportion, and using cross products to solve for your unknown. And in this case, the unknown was how many frogs there were. Let's look at our next problem. The ratio of humpback whales to killer whales was 2 to 7. If there were 42 killer whales, how many humpbacks were there? So, we've got humpback whales, we'll call that H. Humpback whales to killer whales, we'll call killer whales K. Well, the ratio is 2 to 7. So we'll box this so we can refer back to it. So humpback whales, that's always a numerator. That's 2 to 7. 7 is killer whales. We know there's 42 killer whales, so we're going to set up our proportion with 42 in the denominator, because the denominator is always the killer whales. And what we need to figure out now is our H value. How many humpback whales are there when there are 42 killer whales? Let's multiply. We're going to find cross products. 2 times 42. Well, 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 2 is 4. So 2 times 42 must be 84. So 7 times H, our number of humpback whales, that must also be 84. So 7 times H equals 84. We can go ahead and solve this. We know this is going to be division because H has to be some number less than 84. So 84 divided by 7. 7 goes into 8 one time. We get 7 with 1 left over, and we bring down our 4. 7 goes into 14 2 times. 7 times 2 is 14. We have nothing left over. We've got our final answer. How many humpbacks were there? Well, there were 12 humpbacks. And since the question just asked for humpbacks, that's all we have to write. If you wanted to write humpback whales, you could, and you'd get the answer correct as well. Just make sure you have a label in this type of problem. We've got a word problem, so we need a label to tell exactly the number of what we have. Our lesson practice will be on page 470. Make sure your notes are complete, and I'll see you during our next class.